This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
Yeah, I'm thinking the next few minutes are going to be a game changer with your personal and professional life. How can I say that? Because everything we do is based on communication. You're probably doing it wrong. That being said, relationships of all different types aren't exactly what they could be if you were communicating a little more effectively. Today, the 11 traps of communication. Where are we going wrong with that? He's the gentleman behind a wonderful platform with so many different programs. There's so much insight in what he does, even helps coaches learn how to coach. That's just a piece of what he does with intentional achievements. He is Joe Price, back on the program with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Glad to have you there.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about, and this is kind of a pickup from the last time we got together talking about communication. You want to recap what we did?
Yeah, so the question to start with was, what is the definition of communication, right? Because as we've talked about before, our actions and our understandings come out of our definitions. We don't necessarily think consciously of what those definitions are, which I recommend that we do, because they dictate our behavior, right? So communication is the vehicle through which everything happens. Nothing happens in our life without communication. And our definition is communication is the transference of thoughts, feelings, and ideas from one to another through the use of signs, signals, and symbols. And we talked about that last time, where signs, signals, and symbols have to be interpreted. And so does our language. I don't know if we talked about this before, but studies have shown less communication breakdown with people who speak different languages than the two people who are speaking the same language.
Say that again. I want to make sure because that says a lot.
Yeah. So communication breakdown happens less often if the two people communicating are speaking different languages, as opposed to us when we communicate the one language of English. There is so much interpretation going by that we're not dealing with the communication anymore. We're dealing with the definitions of what we're trying to communicate.
Do you feel that many times emotion gets in the way and derails the communication, whereby if it's two different languages, you're not going to convey that emotion so much. You're going to kind of leave it out because you feel that, well, they're speaking a different language. I got to focus on my communication to get my point across.
Yeah, we are much more focused on that because we know that they're not going to fully understand what we're talking about. So we put more effort into the understanding of the communication.
That's exactly where I was going with that.
Right.
Where it's you're I'm going to use the word. You're being more intentional to make sure what you speak is what they're going to hear as best they can, or best you can convey that message.
Right. So I'm not sure I asked this question last time, but what do you think is the overall purpose of communication?
To effectively convey your thoughts. I'm going to dumb it down, make it very simple. And I've used the word effectively, but to convey your thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. So your definition is good, but it's narrow. Right?
I did intentionally make it that way. I got to tell you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Because you talked about the sender, but there are two people in the communication loop, right? The sender and the receiver. So I know we talked about this last time, that it's 100% responsibility on each party in the communication to ensure the communication is effective and breakdown doesn't happen, right?
Sure.
Most people are not willing to take that 100% responsibility. And if they are willing, they don't necessarily know specifically how to do it.
So I'm going to ask you a completely off base question. I work on a radio, so it's a one-way communication. I'm
Correct.
communicating something to a listener. How does that work?
Well, you have to think about who is my audience,
Yes.
right? Because I might be talking to engineers, or I might be talking to a CEO or a different personality type
Yep.
that you have to, as the sender, think about what is the language or the words or the interpretation that my listener is going to have. And then that forces me to think more clearly, more concisely, more precisely as I'm sending that communication.
Know your audience. And I guess that would apply to even somebody who does social media, putting something out there. And
Yep.
many times over the years, and it's a prize demographic in radio, female 25 to 54 years old. They make a
Hmm.
lot of most of the purchasing decisions in the home, et cetera, et cetera. We would
Yeah.
actually put a picture of a woman in front of
There
the
you go.
microphone so that,
Yeah.
we'd be thinking when we communicate what she might be thinking so we can better connect. But the reason I brought that up was you
Sure.
say it's, 100%. It's both sides in that way.
Yeah.
In that instance, it's kind of a one-way communication because you're not getting feedback from the other.
Well, here's the interesting part that you're bridging into. The eighth or ninth trap is controlling the environment, because the
Hmm.
environment can get in the way of what we're trying to communicate and how we're communicating it. Is it a noisy place? That's going to affect it. If we're in a library where we're not supposed to be talking at all, that's going to affect it.
Talking on the radio and
Engineers might
the
take things
music's too
differently,
loud. you know,
right?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Wow.
CEOs may take something different, even the same words might take something different from it that an engineer, a manager, or subordinate might take.
Just because of the environment.
Correct.
Hmm. Would you
Now,
say? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Let me get back to the overall purpose of communication, because this is extremely important. The overall purpose of communication is to create understanding and connection. Create understanding and connection.
Hmm. Before we get to the 11 traps of communication, I want to go into that deeper.
Okay.
So, create understanding that is a little, it's rhetorical. You want the person to understand what you're communicating.
Right.
So, I don't know. Do we need to dissect that even more, or you think that stands alone?
Well, we do, because one of the traps that we're going to get into is you're playing dual roles when you send a message. Let me explain.
Sure.
You send the message, the receiver receives it. As they're receiving it, are they a blank slate where you don't know what they're thinking about? Or are they rolling their eyes? Are they looking around for an answer? Are they asking questions or not asking questions in order to clarify what you said, right? And so for us to think about, our job is to create understanding. That may change the way we send the message, and it may change the way the listener hears the message and clarifies it so that they're on the same page.
So that's the understanding part. Now the connection part.
Yeah. So in some of the traps that you're going to see, there are connection issues, because you may have a friend that you just made and you're communicating with them the same way as you communicate with somebody who's been a friend for 20 years.
Mm.
That friend for 20 years knows the vocabulary you use. They know how you communicate, the other 93% of communication that's not the words. They know you better, and there's already a connection. And when there is that connection, people are going to take, they're not going to take as many liberties with you because they have that connection with you. But the new friend that you just made, you don't have that kind of connection yet. So through the communication, not only are we trying to create understanding, we're trying to connect with that person and how best to communicate with them.
Do you feel, Joe, that, and it's been said that we have different parts to our personality. I'm not referring to split personality, different
Yes.
parts of our personality. So the way you speak to your partner is different than the way you speak to your best friend, is different than the way you speak to a work colleague. You use that part of your personality so you'll have better understanding and better connection with them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it works in the reverse as well, right? I've been using a specific personality profiling system now out of the University of Pennsylvania for the last 30 years. And in my coaching and my training, we use that personality profiling to help us understand where that person is coming from, what personality traits they have, and how they listen is part of that survey. Because if you know you're talking to a type A personality, for example, what we call group one, you're going to communicate in a very concise, precise, and sharp way because that's the way that that personality wants communication to be.
Yep.
But if you talk to people who have a group two personality, a type B personality where they're more emotional, they're more into connection, you're going to speak differently to them than you would the type A personality.
Totally understood. And I love those profiles. I've done a few of them on the board of nonprofits, and we've brought people in to facilitate those profiles so that we can see, when we break off into groups and have projects and we have different
Yep.
committees and things like that, we know, oh, well, Jim is this type of personality, so he's best, for this application or
Correct.
communication and so forth.
Yeah. And what you're doing with these profiles is you're shortening the time it takes to connect and get to know that person. You'll probably get there in 6 months or a year, but why do you have to wait 6 months or a year to effectively communicate that person when you can do a personality profile in 30 minutes and understand where they're coming from?
100%. And I love communication. I think that we're very obviously robotic these days. There's not a social connection, but I got to be honest with you. A lot of times I'll talk to friends and, colleagues or whether, and just get to the point, man. Just go. Come on. Get to the point.
Yep.
Maybe they like to hear
group
themselves.
two personality or the group five personality that are naturally storytellers, and they want to give you the whole context behind the subject that you're talking about. And the type A personality is, oh my God, when is this guy going to stop? So that we can get on the page and start moving, because group one type A personalities, they're moving. Right?
In that instance, do you think that the individual that takes longer to explain something, do you think that many times they're thinking the audience or the person they're speaking to wants to hear that?
Yeah. Well, there's two things there that may be going on in that person's mind, but the one that I concentrate on most is what traps are they experiencing, right? That's going to affect that communication regardless of what the audience is, right? And therefore, we've got to really understand our environment, personality types, the kind of fallback positions we have when we communicate, because we all have them, right? And if we're not connected on the same wavelength with these other people, we're going to have a breakdown.
I feel at this point, I don't want to risk running out of time. We have 11 traps to get to. Should we dig in?
Yeah, let's dig in. And what you'll see here is the 11 traps are subdivided into what we call domains, right? Or dimensions. And the first three traps fall into the mental dimension. And the mental dimension is, what are we thinking what's going on in our head as we're trying to communicate, because whatever is going on in your head is going to affect how you communicate, right?
Gotcha.
The second dimension is what you said before, the emotional dimension. And there are three traps in the emotional dimension because as human beings, we can't reduce or eliminate our emotion when we're communicating. And we're not supposed to. But how many use emotion incorrectly when they're communicating, or they're not cognizant of the emotion that they're trying to communicate that's not in sync with the words that you're using or the intent or the outcome that they're looking for.
Would it be more impactful, if possible, to remove as much emotion from your communication? Now, obviously, if you're having a conversation with your partner, spouse, whatever it is, different situation there. But for the other types of communication, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say not. And I coach this a lot because we're human beings. We have emotion,
Mm,
right? We just can't say, oh, I'm going to click my emotion off and have a very intelligent conversation with you. It can't be done as a human being,
mm.
right? That's where emotional intelligence comes into play for us to understand what our emotions are and use them intentionally and intellectually in order to be able to create that understanding and connection that we're looking for.
It sounds like this comes down to awareness. Just be aware of what you're presenting. And,
Yep,
it's almost like mixing the perfect cocktail, if you will. Got to have the
yep.
right blend of this, the right blend of that. So the right blend of emotion going into the communication.
It's absolutely true. And when I coach people in the area of communication, what I ask them to do is in various communication with various people in their lives, what is their fallback communication style?
Hmm.
Because if they're not aware of that, they're going to revert to an old communication style while they're trying to communicate with this person on the same level that they're on. And now we've got communication breakdown because we haven't thought about our intellect, our emotion, the outcome that we're trying to get in order for that communication to be effective.
So that being said, would it seem that somebody is on or can be on autopilot, and what they're really doing at that time is referring to their subconscious, previous communication, previous cues, all of that, and that's just coming up because they're not being intentional about
Yes.
how they're conveying their message.
Yep. The other interesting point is we got two more dimensions that describe the 11 traps. The third dimension is the relational dimension. What's my relationship with you? What's my relationship with my colleagues, with my boss? Because we're going to make some very bad communication decisions based on what we think that relationship is instead of knowing exactly what that relationship is and how we can communicate. You probably have some friends and family where you can just say anything that you want because they're going to take it from you because there's a relationship there
Without judgment.
without judgment, right?
Hmm.
But you have a new relationship, whether it's work or business or personal or in the gym or wherever you are, that new relationship hasn't matured yet in order for us to not violate those relational dimension traps that we
Mm.
have to keep ourselves aware of.
So I think we're going to run out of time, and
Yeah.
I don't even want to ask a question to get to the others, but I don't think we're even going to get to all 11
Well, let me
today.
give you the fourth dimension.
Sure.
And the fourth dimension is what we call the integrative dimension. And what that says is that all of us as human beings carry baggage from our past into our present and our future. So if I had a
Mm.
very difficult conversation with somebody in my past and it create what we call scars or hurts, if somebody wants to communicate with me but doesn't understand what those are for me, it's very innocuous or it's very naive to think that I can communicate and not create breakdown when I start talking and you start to shut down or you start to have an emotional reaction. I didn't have an emotional reaction to what I was telling you because I don't have any baggage about that subject that I'm bringing forward. But I say something to you very innocently and you go crazy, right? Why would you say that to me and get all emotional on this? Because you have baggage in that area that I don't have.
But that's on the other person, i.e., known as a trigger, where I don't know what your triggers are, and you need to regulate that, right?
Yeah. But here's the intentional part. If I'm in a new relationship, I can say, look, I want to talk to you about this subject. Are there emotions or past scars in that subject that we should watch out for?
That's a
And
best.
then you get your answer.
Yes, that's the best case scenario. Sometimes it's uncomfortable to ask those questions.
It's very true,
Yeah.
right? But here's the interesting part about intentionality, and my new book now is starting to address that issue, is intentional is discomfort at times. We want to stay inside our comfort zone. We want to be comfortable with the people that we have a relationship with.
We're
So
programmed that way.
right? We may avoid a conversation. We may tiptoe around a subject because we're not sure what scars, filters, and behavior
Patterns.
baggage
Yeah.
that we're bringing from the past, right?
Hmm.
Intentional living, as you're starting to find out, is deeper than what most of us think about, and intentionality has to force us outside of our comfort zone.
Well, that's where breakthroughs take place.
Correct.
And fortunately, but unfortunately, we are wired through evolution to take the safe route. We just
Correct.
want to remain safe. I don't want to rock the boat. I'm walking on eggshells around this person because, maybe there's been a prior challenge, or you want to please people. Many of us are people pleasers for a number of
Absolutely.
reasons from our past.
Yep. And so I hope what we're doing for you and the audience is helping you understand communication is deeper and more difficult than we give it credit for. And we can't be on autopilot when we're trying to communicate because we're not going to create an understanding and we're not going to create connection.
Oof. This is more challenging than I thought. But
See that?
that's why many of us don't communicate effectively, because we don't set the intention. Many of us are on autopilot, just going with the flow. And wow.
When I train communication in all of our training programs, I start out the session by saying this. My job, and you're going to hate it, but my job is to make communication so deep and so complicated, you're not going to want to communicate with anybody after you're done this session.
We're only on 4 traps. I'm afraid to even get to the 8th one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the key for people to understand is it's not a personal flaw, right? It is predictable patterns that we are not seeing that we have to be more aware of, make a commitment to change, and then go out and do something different.
Comes back to that word, be intentional.
It does.
Yeah,
Everything
it really does. And I'm not trying, to say that, but it does. What's the best way?
We have found with a lot of people, intentionality. Some people look at intentionality on the surface and say, well, I want to be prepared. I want to do this deliberately. But over the couple of months that you and I have had sessions on, we're starting to realize communication is a lot deeper than that.
It really is. And there's so many different aspects to it that you have to be mindful of. And for many different reasons, just that we identified, you may trigger somebody with something. If you want to avoid that, you have to be intentional to find out where they're at within that.
Correct.
Again, we're only on the 4th trap. How do we connect with you? This is just a piece of what you do. There's so much there that can move us forward, transform our lives, get out of the comfort zone. Not the best place for you. Right. Sometimes it's all right. But how do we find you, Joe?
Intentionalachievements.com. I'm on WhatsApp for those who use WhatsApp nationally or internationally. And that's my phone number, 623-680-1776.
Beautiful. Thank you for today. An eye opener, an ear opener, if you will.
Yay.
And we'll get to the rest of the traps next time we get together.
You got it. Thanks,
Awesome.
sir.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success. This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.